Good afternoon, one and all. I am Swati Gupta, along with Dr. Vani Agarwal from Amity Business School, your host for the valedictory session of the 17th International Conference on Sustainable Management Practices for Inclusive Growth, Issues, Challenges, and Strategies. We are grateful to you all for gracing the occasion with your presence. We hope that the last 2 days of extensive discussions and deliberations have opened gates to exploring new ways that will enable us to not only uphold the values and practices of sustainability, but also strategize around the same so that we all can be the contributors to a prosperous and a just society. To begin with the session, we have today with us Honorable Pro Vice Chancellor, Amity University, Haryana, Professor Dr. Vikas Madhupar. We are also joined by our esteemed guest today, Professor Sanjeev Chaturvedi, Advisor, Uzbek Indian Center for Entrepreneurship Development under Chamber of Commerce and Industry of Uzbekistan International, Rotarian Sandeep Saxena, Global Convener SDG Chopal, Trustee and Editor, Blitz India Media Trust, Professor Joe Hubton, Program Director, Project Management, UCD, Michael Smurfit Graduate Business School, Dublin, Ireland, and Dr. Nidhi Nagabhatla, Senior Fellow and Cluster Coordinator, Nature, Climate and Health at United Nations University, Chris, Belgium. We would also like to extend our sincere gratitude to all the guests for having joined today's session and sharing their valuable thoughts with the audience. Amity University Gurugram is a part of Amity Universe and is an innovation and research-oriented university which strives to develop all-round personality of its students by making them not just excellent professionals, but also good individuals with understanding and regard for human values. Amity University offers as many as 143 undergraduate, postgraduate, and doctoral programs in diversified areas. These programs have been designed keeping in mind with the latest industry trends, which help the students discover new academic passions and thus attract a respectable number of international students as well. Amity University Haryana has been awarded with the LEED Platinum certificate for being the best university in India and the second best in Asia, which has placed us on the global map by creating an environmentally friendly university. An environmentally friendly campus amidst Aravalli Hills, which are also known as the footsteps of Haryana, is indeed a step towards promoting environmentally friendly values amongst not only the students and faculty members, but also surrounding villages and areas. Amity Business School is committed towards innovation, knowledge sharing, openness, and developing entrepreneurship skills for a new generation of global managers who hold a passion for knowledge, teamwork, and having a caring attitude towards the environment. The brilliant young minds at Amity Business School are nurtured under the tutelage of accomplished faculty who inculcate innovative thoughts among students and initiate an interdisciplinary approach to all domains of study. To keep students abreast of latest developments, the curriculum is updated by industry advisory boards composed of top industry professionals with emphasis on experiential learning. Learning at Amity Business School is a judicious mix of blended learning pedagogy, industry integration, project-based learning, and mentorship backed by a strong choice-based credit system. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Vani Agarwal to take the session forward.
Thank you, Swati. It has been perfectly said that single-use plastic doesn't make sense. We need millions of imperfect zero wasters. Be a part of the solution. Don't just think you have to take action. On this note, we would like to begin with our session today. First, we would like to invite Professor Sanjeev Chaturvedi, Advisor, Uzbek India Center for Entrepreneurship Development, Professor Dr. Sanjeev Chaturvedi is a graduate in economics, MBA in marketing management, and has done his MPhil in international business. He has been awarded PhD in economics on the topic strategic posture of small and medium enterprises under WTO framework. He has more than 40 papers to his credit in the field of international economic environment and WTO, which has been published in Harvard University, Cambridge University, and IIM Ahmedabad conferences. He was the only Asian selected for CDG Germany fully paid scholarship for higher studies in the field of international marketing. He has written 5 books in the area of marketing and entrepreneurship. His 5th book, 50 Couplets of Vidurniti, 50 Lessons for Entrepreneurs, has just been released worldwide by Lambert Academic Publishing, Germany in December 2022. Dr. Chaturvedi has 35 years of experience in industry and academics. In industry, he has worked at senior positions in Lanaceda Industries Limited, Engineering Export Promoting Council, PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry. He was also Director, National Institute of MSME, Hyderabad. He has won many national and international awards in both corporate and academic field over the years. Working as senior professor and chairperson at EDII Ahmedabad, he was selected by EDII and joined as advisor at India-Uzbekistan Entrepreneurship Development Center. Dr. Sanjeev Chaturvedi is presently working as Director, GIMS Greater Noida. We welcome you, sir, to the Amity Business School, Amity University, Haryana. Now the forum is all yours, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vani. It's a pleasure to be associated always with MHE conferences or workshops or interaction. So my first greetings to all the panelists here. They are more learned than me, and I would also like to hear them. When we started, especially I will talk about 2-3 things in just 5, 6, 7 minutes more. That when I was in National Institute of MSME, Hyderabad as Director General, we started something. We never knew it was SDG goal, to be very honest. Somebody later told us, no, it is a part of SDG goals. So what exactly this project was, it is interesting to note, and maybe sometime very informative also, that there was an engineering college in Warangal who approached in Hyderabad at our institute to file a patent for a unique product which was textile made by cotton and banana leaves. So it was a combination of 2 threads which used to go through the machines, and a special type of cloth was produced. So we got interested in that, and we thought, okay, let us first visit what exactly they are doing, and let us see that if we can help them. So we had a patent office in National Institute of MSME, which was under Ministry of Micro, Small and Medium Enterprise in Delhi. So then we visited their campus, and we found that there were around 50 women who were involved in this center, and it was all sponsored by the engineering college at that time. So the first thing which is tried as per SDG goal is the gender equality, which was through economic benefit to the women, especially women entrepreneurs. And the head also of that center was a lady, Miss Sridevi, because Sridevi is such a beautiful name and such a beautiful actress, so it remembers even after so many years. So Miss Sridevi was heading that center, and there were special machines which were making these clothes, and right from towel to bed sheet to drawing room, or even something like we use in furnishing, everything was made out of this specific product. So the second thing which attracted us was the environmental friendly product, which is also an SDG goal to minimize the pollution. And we as a MSME institute started taking this center as a part of our project rather than the engineering college project. So we increased their salary, we increased we arranged for their bus from the village from where they were coming. And slowly we found that about 100 women started working in that center. And we also created a marketing, I would say, outlet for them in our campus in Hyderabad, which was very well populated in Yusuf Guda, a place called Yusuf Guda. And suddenly the sales start getting. We were talking in every conference, anybody entering our institute, and we started telling them this: buy one cloth or buy one towel or maybe hand towel. And slowly that product got like a wildfire in Hyderabad for about a year or two. So that was our support to them. Then thirdly, we thought what we can do more with these people or the women who are involved in this center. So we went to their village where this 110 women were working with us, and we started telling them about hygiene, use of less plastics, use of toilets, because toilets were not there. So we got funding from the ministry, different ministry, for making toilets in this entire village, especially for women. So it also became a part of SDG goal. And to be very honest, for almost 1 year, we did not knew that we are doing something for SDG goals. When experts started telling us, oh, this can go in this SDG goal, this can go in this SDG goal, then we realized that we are doing something very good, which is also at the global level. Lastly, I like to highlight two things here. We also started focusing on the children who were employed there, because they were coming, their men were going somewhere else for work, and the children were left and they were playing in the fields, or sometime anti social elements were also there. So we started having those kids with a meal in the school, and they started be getting educated, because we had a faculty pool of our own of the institute. So every day there was some faculty member going to this village, teaching them just elementary things like right from the alphabets to maybe fifth class, you can say. And this also became a part of SDG goal. So slowly what we found that if we take we had a cluster approach. We called it in the MSME the cluster approach, where you find people and you can train them and you can create something new. So that is called in MSME policy the cluster approach. So we found that if we have this cluster approach in other places also, we will also be addressing the SDG goals, which is also a very important thing for all of us as a society and also at a global level. And I am very happy to share that this model of what we adopted as cluster approach, we got 17 centers across India like this. So we adopted a village, we adopted women's for a certain product or certain, I would say, work, and entirely taking the village as a part of our part of MSME cluster, and of course addressing the SDG goals. So SDGs. So the challenge here is that sometime intentionally or unintentionally we are doing it, but we do not know. And I think there is lack of awareness also at the ground level that what can come into this criteria, and maybe that can also be counted as a part of the contribution of the society or a country or a state as a whole. So I would request all the experts to make a very, and we used to do in Telugu also. So that was another challenge, because it was a Telugu speaking state, another state for non-Hindi and non-English people. Sorry. So that is a challenge, that we made everything in Telugu for them, and we achieved some wonderful results out of it. So this was my small experience, which we can share with all the panelists and the listeners who are listening it, that we should take a very specific goal setting, specific work which is locally available, and integrate all these things in a nutshell and address the SDGs. So I think that is one thing I wanted to share on this platform. And I will be very happy if I could be of any help to any of the panelists or the listeners, where we can contribute as an institution. We have around 5,000 plus students on the campus. So we can always be part of this social work and of course contribute to global environment. So thank you for listening me. Over to you.
Thank you so much, sir, for addressing our audience as well as the panelists. So before moving forward, I would like to have a question from my side to you. Just a second, I just written it. So the question goes like this: that do you think that the perception of sustainability is going to change in the future, and if it changes, then how will it be affecting the new business, sir?
See, I think now new businesses are going towards eco-friendly environment, women equality, both in the pay scales and also the conditions for employment. Also, we are also moving towards there are some organizations which are run by the women, they are controlled by the women, they are having fabulous businesses across. So I think I am very positive that these are achievable goals. Although we are in between, I think we have to 2030 is our deadline for that. Some of the goals set by the agencies, and I think we have initiated the information which is there to be circulated among the people who do not know. India, as you know, is a very, I would say, complex society where we have different languages, different social traditions, social restrictions, social and economic criterias, even caste systems. So breaking all these things, I think this is achievable. And it is only a matter to bring them together. I think what we are lacking right now is bringing all the stakeholders at one platform. Once we do it, I think nothing is non-achievable. We can achieve everything. So that is my view.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely. I totally agree to what you said, and it's more informative for me as well as a student. So thank you so much for your words of enlightenment, sir. I learned a lot from you. To begin with the session forward, so being a road tractor myself from RI District 3070, it gives me an immense pleasure to extend a warm welcome to our next speaker for today. He is none other than Rotarian Sandeep Saxena, who is the Development Editor, Blitz India, Life Member and Senior Advisor Partnership, IOD Foundation, formerly Head Partnership Action Aid Association. He is the Vice President to Rotary International District 3011, which falls in Delhi. And he's from Rotary International, belonging to the club RCGP. He's the President-elect for 2022-24 for RCGP, Rotary International District 3011. He's a global convener for SDG Chopal. Rotarian Dr. Sandeep has 25 years plus of industry learnings, 15 plus years of US ecosystem, heading leading academic American associations. So we welcome you to share your thoughts with us.
Thank you, Swati. I am so happy that the actor is among us today. And I will like to thank and compliment the Amity University on taking these sustainability initiatives regularly. And greetings to all the panelists. So the topic today is going to talk about the sustainable inclusive growth. Because I come from the ecosystem, I'd like to talk a little more in details and hope you bear with me. And I think we have 15 minutes, Swati?
Yes, sir, yes.
Okay, thank you. So we start with the topic on inclusive growth and sustainability. Growth is necessary for the organizations and economies to survive and thrive. The future of growth must be both sustainable and inclusive. While getting there will be challenging, but it is possible. So we have certain perspectives and certain questions we raise to ourselves, and then we find solutions and we find the possible areas of collaborations within this ecosystem to address the issues which are challenging, all of us know, but then there is a possibility of taking it forward. Yesterday, we were part of the UN Global Compact National Convention on SDGs, talking about the Sustainable Development Goals and the progress we have taken and the challenges, the growth, the progress of the goals have faced in the light of the COVID pandemic which the world faced. All of us were part of that. So finding solutions will require innovations and collaboration within and across the organizations, accelerating the ability to grow through advances in technology and capabilities, spurring innovations without damaging the planet, and bringing the people along in equitable, inclusive ways. Can the collaboration between the business, government, and society spur economic growth that benefits everyone without destroying the planet? We have to together try to articulate the scope and potential solutions for one of the biggest challenges of our times, fostering the economic growth for the good of all. Creating a path to sustainable and inclusive growth is likely to be a challenge 10 times greater than the pandemic. I hope all the speakers in the panel would agree with me. It's a huge challenge for all of us together. 3 dimensions together will drive our future prosperity, but we lead with growth because sustainability and inclusion will not be possible without growth. The aspiration around the economic growth needs to be not only about increasing the wealth, but broader well-being of all. That growth can spur inclusion by creating equal opportunity and broad-based progress, lowering inequality, raising the dignity of work. While growth, inclusion, and sustainability are often framed as trade-offs, Professor would agree with me, we think about them as and, not or. We need all 3 for this equation to work. Why is growth so important to promoting the other 2 elements? First, the growth leads to work. Growth increases our incomes and our standard of living. It increases the security and resilience, poverty alleviation, and education. So there are many positive associations. But growth touches on inequality because skills bias leads to a dispersion of the income. So growth also promotes the wealth of the people at the bottom of the society. Growth has a footprint effect on sustainability, but it also makes it possible to finance the decarbonization investments. In fact, the impact of the economic growth on environmental footprint is smaller than the leverage it provides to finance a reduction in that footprint. Sustainability investments lead to new jobs and business models. But at the same time, an energy transition typically hits the poorest first, negatively affecting inclusion. So the picture is complex. How has the economic growth affected the inclusion and sustainability in the past, and what impact do you see it having in the future? Some very interesting perspectives. We sometimes get lost in the ups and downs of cycles, but the world's per capita GDP is 40% higher now than it was 20 years ago. Over the next 2 to 3 decades, the GDP could more than double. So we are far from reaching the limits of growth. This progress has delivered powerful benefits, particularly to the poor populations, lifting more than 1 billion people out of poverty. Economic sufficiency is the primary measure of inclusion, so growth has been a positive force of inclusion. While the poverty challenge remains immense, the number of people who need to be lifted out of extreme poverty today is lower than the number that had been lifted out in the past couple of decades, largely as a result of growth. Growth is also important to sustainability to make the step-up investments needed to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. We estimate that a $3.5 trillion of incremental annual investment will be required, 60% higher than what we spend currently. That's a very large number that policymakers and business leaders struggle to wrap their heads around. Example to share here is it's more than the average annual increase in the public debt, but growth can help us finance and sustain that level of investment. Compare the incremental investment required relative to the corporate profit pool today, that investment is about 50% of the global profits. But in a high growth scenario that boosts the corporate profits, the figure drops to about 20%, making those step-up investments more feasible. Having said that, growth is not automatic. The economy did not always come out from the past recessions with strong and sustained growth. But we are seeing businesses doubling down on the growth agenda. So the conditions could arise to enable us to enter an age of renewed economic progress. How does this global picture translate to national economies? The global picture ultimately comprises individual economies, and this is where the connection between growth, inclusion, and sustainability comes through. A case in point, in emerging economies where 50 to 60% of the population still lacks electricity at home, the arrival of the electrification and the rising incomes will produce a surge in energy consumption. It's a paradigm. For such countries, it is almost impossible to sacrifice the aspiration of raising the incomes in order to forestall that steep increase in resource consumption. Every country will have to set its own threshold for what its population can accept and afford in making climate-related transitions. To help bring this to life, my colleagues and I were talking about the sustainability challenge in India yesterday at the UN Global Compact, as I shared earlier. The collaboration to close the commitment action gap to achieve the Agenda 2030 was the theme of yesterday's event, which clearly came out with clear outcomes that partnerships play a critical role in achievement of the global agenda. This includes all the stakeholders. The Honorable Minister who joined us yesterday in his address placed emphasis on the need for collective action on a very grand scale at both national and international levels, and asserted the need for strong public institutions. What sustainability means in Australia or North America is quite different from what it means in the developing economies. Companies also face these questions because their specific footprint on the world will guide their priorities in sustainability, inclusion, and growth. For example, a large retailer, the biggest priority may be the reskilling agenda, because if they equip a large workforce for the challenges of the future, they will contribute a lot to the I dimension, the inclusion. Companies with large resource and material footprints, on the other hand, may need to double down on the S dimension, the sustainability. What role does the productivity rate play in whether we get the growth necessary to boost inclusion and sustainability? Productivity growth is the biggest driver of economic growth. It is the only sustainable long-term way to grow an economy, tap into the demand, and do so in a competitive way. But the long-term trend on productivity growth in many economies has been flat to declining. What's more, the aging demographics suggest that workforce expansion will not be a big lever for economic growth in the next 20 to 30 years. Technology is a big driver of productivity, but technology changes imply changes in the skill the workers would need. Income and wealth inequality has been rising globally. How can we prevent the future from further exacerbating this disparity, which is increasing day by day? Growth lifts entire economies, so the primary effect of the growth is positive for inclusion. However, the benefits of that growth are not distributed equally. So I come deeply from the social sector, so I understand all this, and hence I lay a little more emphasis on the equality along with inclusion. We have, for example, the skills-oriented inequality. On one level, this is a huge opportunity. If we can move workers up the skills pyramid, there are better paying jobs waiting for them. But if that supply does not grow fast enough, we will see rising inequality. On one level, this is a huge opportunity. If we can move workers up the skills pyramid, there are better paying jobs waiting for them. But if that supply does not grow fast enough, we still see the rising inequality. 200 years ago, we would have asked the same question and given the same fallacious answer that there are limits to how much we can upskill the people. When people thought of the transition out of agriculture, they never imagined that today 40% of the population in the rich countries would have a college degree and be doing very different jobs. There are not many limits in my view, because it's hard to predict what jobs the future will bring. We need to focus on building adaptability, empathy, and interpersonal relationships. These are the skill sets that will equip the world for the future. We should also bring automation into the equation. Automation could bring higher productivity without necessarily requiring much upskilling. What if every stonemason had a bricklaying machine that handled the difficult pieces? Their jobs would be different, but not more difficult. Take driving assisted by digital maps that makes the job easier and can increase the productivity. It's the mix of automation and human skills that will bring us to the next level of productivity. Do you think the education systems need to change beyond offering specific skills training? We need to radically rethink the education. It's not just about accelerating the skills training, it's about building the cognitive and interpersonal skills that people will need in the future. We have to think generationally, and it's not clear that education systems around the world are building that adaptability and creativity that people will need to remain relevant in the workforce. Huge challenges going forward. It is not just a challenge for the educational system. Every company also needs to create experiences that help workers learn, not only through the explicit training, but methods and practices through which people unconsciously learn. From a CEO's perspective, probably the biggest near-term opportunity is to strengthen that organizational capital, processes, the practices, because the learning you enable in your workforce will sustain the productivity and the income growth, and hence sustainability. Has the growth generally translated into higher standards of living? Growth leads to rising consumption, but the supply side needs to align with the demand. In segments such as clothing, furnishing, communications, consumers have benefited from price declines thanks to the globalization and the new technologies, which has been enormously beneficial from an inclusion perspective. Education, housing, and healthcare, on the other hand, have not benefited as much from technology and globalization. Many markets see the inflation eating up to 70% of the average household income gains. In these areas, growth has not promoted inclusion. But fixing this problem is a huge opportunity for businesses. Innovations in construction techniques, for example, could ease housing supply and address some of the price inflation. What impact do you see population growth having on sustainability? As an economy grows in GDP per capita, its impact on the planet also grows steeply because consumption increases on many fronts. Energy, water, food, or the complexity of the nutrition basket, housing. So the fastest growing countries also have rapidly growing populations, so their overall demand for resources will grow. This reality has repercussions for the planet as a whole. Many inclusion strategies are country specific, but we need a global approach because the rising population and per capita income in lower income countries will significantly affect the planet and the people. Navigating through this in a way that is least disruptive to the growth and inclusion agenda will be a critical part of the puzzle. And sustainability can bolster growth too. If we get the financing right and minimize the pain for all population segments, we could see strong growth as we create more green jobs and productivity rises. We could also see significant mitigation of risks related to acute climate events that harm productive assets and GDP. You paint a complex picture with many interconnected parts and high costs. How do we pay for it all? We don't pretend to have all the answers, but it is a worthy and necessary challenge for us as an institution. For leaders in business and society, developing countries need $500 billion for financing for climate change. Adaptation by the mid-century. I live in a developing country, and after a couple of years of pandemic, the government doesn't have much money to invest. Should we think about transfers between countries and financing across the generations? Are those currently in the workforce prepared to pay for what needs to happen over the next 20, 30, 40 years? Just the general questions we need to ask ourselves. The second question is around inequality. In the global knowledge economy, what happens when the workers in developed economies can easily access skills training and other economies cannot? Finally, we face growth headwinds. How do we jumpstart productivity in the context of an energy transition? How do we navigate the labor supply constraints? We currently have an upside down labor market where people are available but returning to the workforce. We have to think through what needs to change around each of these elements for sustainable, inclusive growth to become a reality. A few recommendations that point to the paths ahead. What are some of the main steps? We set up challenges and matrix as a way of getting a pulse on whether we are moving towards the goal. One is reducing the $3.5 trillion transition cost of the decarbonization through technology and innovation, which I mentioned earlier. If we target shaving 20% of that number through innovations, that would make a substantial difference. On the reskilling, we estimate that by 2030, we need 100 million workers retrained. So let's start tracking that. Basic things such as housing, healthcare, education, digital access, and energy need to be affordable and available for all. And we need to track that as well. What is the role of individual business leaders in addressing these challenges? Business leaders should be thinking about 3 areas. Is your aspiration right? And are you moving fast enough on addressing the sustainability, inclusion, and growth? Secondly, have you worked out what your organization should prioritize versus what will require a broader consensus? Finally, how can the conflict between this long-term narrative and short-term business realities be addressed? What role should the governments be playing in ensuring that corporate management teams make these goals organizational priorities? The channels through which inclusion and sustainability surface on the agenda alongside productivity growth come down to national economic frameworks. We can look at emerging economies and find that the one common thread connecting the high growth economies that delivered well on inclusion and sustainability was a higher level of contested leadership. I think I'll stop here and would be happy to have questions from the audience. Thank you so much again for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, sir. Your words really were really enlightening for me as well. And the way you have briefed us about the automation and its relation with the productivity and the interpersonal skills of an individual, as well as the green jobs, the corporate management goals, I hope definitely there must be a query or a sort of questions in the minds of the panelists or the participants. Now the forum is all open for the participants or the panelists who wants to have the following questions to sir. Anybody from the participants on the panelist?
There was an interesting question that I put one answer to in the Q&A. Our Peter asked, growth doesn't happen on its own. Are there any measures you would recommend in order to accelerate growth for carbon neutrality? And I put in my answer, which was education around positive returns on investment, sharing good case studies and practical templates from companies and other institutions that have done something that's made a difference. But that's just a little bit of the puzzle, I suspect. So that's maybe something to discuss.
I think you nicely put, Professor, the point, and that's the way forward. And if we have to look at this challenge on the sustainability and at the same time addressing the inclusion and the growth, we have to be mindful of getting along and taking along each other. And that's these SDG 2030 agenda, leave no one behind.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
So even when I introduced you, I got to know that you are, leading an SDG Chapal, you were working there. So I would like to know just a brief about it. Like, were there any challenges that SDG Chapal has faced since its inception,
So thank you, Swati, for raising that. And I will start from the points which Professor Sanjeev raised on awareness and collaborations. So the entire initiative of the SDG Chopal, which we started with the Niti Aayog and 60 other partners, which includes national and international partners, the whole idea was awareness. When you are aware of something, you tend to be a part of it because you know about it. And when you are a part of it, you are able to contribute to it. When you are able to contribute to it, then it becomes a movement. And that is what is needed today. The world, each stakeholder has to be a part of the SDG movement. Then only we can see the light of the day. Otherwise, we have another MDG story. So that's how we look at the SDG Chopal movement. And we are very committed in terms of taking it to the rural communities so that, at the end of the day, we may be talking so many things about SDGs in five-star hotels, doing conferences, talking about sustainability, putting up many reports. Even the Niti Aayog puts together a SDG index every year. We have Dr. Nidhi, maybe she will throw more light on the UN system because we have a lot of UN arms partnering in this SDG Chopal initiative. But then at the end of the day, it's very important what is in there for the common man and how we can take along the communities along with us in this mission. Because the idea is to kind of, contribute, collaborate, and scale up the whole story. I call it the India growth story, or we may look at the larger picture of the world. But SDGs is an amazing tool to kind of, gear up the entire system and the stakeholders and come together and see what best we can do together to address the needs of the communities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sir, this is Sharma, a participant. I had one question with respect to SDG. So, though the Niti Aayog and Atmanirbhar Bharat are so many forces are there to look up the SDGs, but really how they are linking the practicability of SDG in each and every sector. Is there any parameters or is there any feedback system? How much they have reaching and how much they need to reach? And who is taking care of all these things? Whether the Niti Aayog, they have drafted all these things, or Niti Aayog is looking all these SDGs, or any other government sectors are looking. Example, in agricultural sector, NABARD is taking some initiatives. Similarly, SDG goals are listed out. How to achieve? Is there any regulatory bodies are there to look after all these SDGs?
So for the SDG in our country, in India, Niti Aayog is the nodal agency which takes care of the entire implementation across the country, of course, supported by the relevant ministries. So when we talk of, let's say, SDG 6 on water sanitation, we have the Jal Shakti ministry, the water, all the ministries come together to ensure that we are kind of looking at the progress of the SDGs and see that is how they are being achieved. The other
Okay.
is in terms of the reporting, the SDG India Index is put together by the Niti Aayog, which is actually drawn down until the district levels. So the districts are also engaged, and there is they call a competition between the districts in terms of the SDG progress. We have a very, very senior mentor colleague, Dr. Mishra, who has just joined. Welcome, Dr. Sab. Dr. Sab has been a huge supporter for the SDG Chopal, and he's been part of the very senior member of the UN Habitat at the Nairobi. Maji, hope I answered your question.
Yes, sir, I got. The only concern is, what is that I'm happy with all SDGs and everything.
Sir, sorry to disturb you, but excuse me, sir, sorry to disturb you. We are running out of time. So like one or two questions are allowed. Like if you have any more questions, you can type it in the chat box. Maybe he would be able to answer there.
Thank you.
I'm really sorry for it. Yeah, thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. It was really an informative session for every panelist, I guess, and even for me as well. So moving forward with the event, the next speaker on the speakers list for today is, I would now like to introduce our next speakers on the speakers list. He is Professor Joe Houghton, Program Director, Project Management, UCD, Michael Smurfit Graduate Business School, Dublin, Ireland. After a career running global projects for multinationals, Professor Joe switched into a portfolio career of university teaching, consultancy, and non-profit work in early 2000s. He is the creator and director of the UCD Smurfit MSc in Project Management at one of the world's top 100 business schools. Professor Joe has an International Executive MBA and various postgraduate graduate awards in teaching and learning. His research interest includes online learning, experiential learning, universal design for learning, communities of practice and innovation in teaching. He hosts the Plus One podcast, where he interviews innovative educators from around the world. We welcome you, sir, to Amity University, Gurugram. The forum is all yours. Thank you.
Namaste. Thank you very much for inviting me. And it's great to be here from a very, very cold Dublin, Ireland. I suspect you haven't got -3 degrees in India this afternoon. So, so yeah, great to be here. I'm going to spend 10 minutes or so just to, if you like, go from the global huge picture that we've just had painted from Sandeep and bring it down, if you like, to a slightly more micro level. But there's so many linkages with what we've heard from the previous two speakers. So let me just share my screen, and hopefully you are seeing. Are you seeing my slide okay there? And my sound is okay? Yeah. All good. All good. Okay. So I run a master's program in project management in Dublin, and I have students from all over the world. I'm lucky enough to have 27 Indian students in my cohort this year, which is fabulous. And I had the chance to bring in a completely new module last year for this program. So I knew that there was a gap in the program in that we weren't yet talking really about sustainability. So I kind of decided, right, I'm going to structure a module around sustainability. So I just want to talk about that and then link it to what we've been hearing so far, because there's a lot of linkage between the conference themes and what's been talked about already this morning. My assumption, an assumption is such a dangerous word, isn't it? My assumption was that all my students, who are, young, bright, early 20s, highly educated students, my assumption was they all knew about the UN Sustainable Development Goals, that sustainability was on their agenda, that they knew about this stuff. They didn't. Yeah. And I think this is, I've spoken about this case study at a couple of conferences recently. And in a conference about sustainability, there's an assumption that everybody knows about sustainability. Yeah. But everybody doesn't know about sustainability. And that's one of the really important things that we're here. Perhaps, Amity, Smurfit, many people in the room here are educators of one kind or another, whether you're a research, centered academic, or whether you're a teacher like me, because I don't consider myself to be a kind of research academic. And I think this thing of sowing seeds is fundamentally important. And small seeds turn into big trees, and we start a movement. So that's what I wanted to do with this. So making a difference, inculcating the idea of sustainability into graduates, into students who then go into the world, and this becomes part of their DNA, that they will think about sustainability, whatever they do in their jobs and in their lives, and doing that in a way also that implements something like universal design for learning, where we offer choice and student agency and stuff. So I structured this module assuming that they knew about sustainable development goals, and found out very early on that they didn't. So I had to kind of change things as I went along. And as soon as I realized this, after asking the class about the SDGs and finding blank looks, I gave them a week. So I created a formative assignment, so an ungraded assignment, and I split the class into 17 groups, and I assigned each group one SDG. Okay. And I said to them, I want you to go off and I want you to research your SDG for the week. Okay. This was, non-classroom activity. And I want you to come back next week. But what I did was I gave them a template. So I went onto a tool, an online tool, which is a free tool that anybody can use, called Canva. Okay, so Canva, canva.com. Anybody can use this tool. And I created this little template here. And I just gave them a very quick introduction to the SDGs, and then you can see just blank, blank 17 different slides. Okay, so I told each of the groups, right, fill 4 or 5 pages with well curated links and information about your SDG. Okay. A week later, all the groups had created a 106-page fabulous report on all the SDGs. And we've got embedded videos, we've got, case studies, we've got up-to-date information and data. And this one had forced them into looking at SDGs, individually. But then this became an artifact that they could use in a summative assignment that I subsequently gave them. Okay, so there's the formative assignment. Now, I've shared this deck with Dr. Neeti, and Dr. Neeti, please feel free to share this to all the participants if there's any interest. And you'll see that I've included the QR codes. So if anybody is interested in using these templates, you can go onto Canva and you can make a copy of them and adjust them for your own use. Okay, so as an educator, I strongly believe in sharing resources and making stuff available to each other. So that is something. So the formative learnings, we had this beautifully researched report, and there's a link there to that report as well. Okay. So what did the students get out of this? Well, now they understood a lot more about the SDGs. Yeah. And the awareness was raised for them. They'd collaborated in co-creating a substantial document, which we have since kind of published. And they've used that in their interviews with potential employers, and they've got fantastic feedback on it from potential employers. So, and this was done in a week. It's incredible what people can do when they're kind of focused on stuff. So the summative assignment was MAD 117. Okay, now MAD 117 sounds a bit crazy, doesn't it? But there is method in this. So MAD is make a difference. Yeah, and it was all based around kind of the SDGs, the design thinking framework, and then UDL, Universal Design for Learning, where I'm asking students to engage, but allowing them lots of choice in how they represent their learning. Okay, so that's just a link to the CAST guidelines. So they could do this off individually or in pairs, and they could design their assignment however they liked, and they could submit it in any form that they liked. Okay, and the brief was make a difference. So there's the MAD, 100 hours of student effort, 17 SDGs. So you've got to make the world a better place. You have to make a positive change. You have to make someone's life better. And this can be a big thing or a little thing. Plan, execute, and implement a measurable positive change, and then share your project. Okay, so this is experiential learning. This is project-based learning. This is, pulling together all the skills from the project management program that they've done over the last 2 years. This is one of their final assignments. Okay. So I wanted them to link theory with action. I wanted a sense of urgency. I wanted a sense of purpose. And if SDGs don't give us a sense of purpose, nothing will. Yeah. And I wanted to inspire them. So did we manage it? Well, I would say we did. So here's the final report summary that I put together from what they did. Okay, now let me take you to page 9. Online coaching for a child in India. So this is what one of my students produced. Okay, he was on a phone call with his sister, and his maid son was having awful problems at school in India. Yeah? So this student of mine decided to offer that child, who was 5, Zoom coaching, okay, from Dublin back to India. And he did this, and he provided the child with 33 hours of online coaching, and the child scored an A and came in the top 5% of his class. Okay. Now, look, in the global scheme of things, this is one child in India who's done better in class than otherwise. But who knows what that child will turn out to be? Yeah. That child will be an industry leader or a musician or a religious figure or whatever. We don't know. But we're sowing seeds. We're sowing seeds in the people that we affect, and we're sowing seeds in our students. And I just thought, I led with that one because I just loved that story. But look at a few of these other ones. Right. Raise awareness of the citizens of Sarajevo around air pollution, moving households to zero waste, effective charging of EV cars, going into a small company and helping them with sustainability initiatives, measurable changes, all kinds of stuff that they came up with, the students. The stuff that I would never have thought of. This one, 2 students went and worked with a bin, the bin lorries that come around and collect the bins. Yeah, they saved that company €100,000 a year as a result of the sustainable initiatives that they helped that company initiate. And this is one college project. Okay, so we've made a difference, with this project. And again, there's the report if you want to have a look at it. I kind of plotted the SDGs against the assignments to see what was touched, and these were the SDGs. So we go from the top there, the partnerships SDG number 17, and all the way down. The only SDG that the students actually didn't engage with was no poverty, and I suspect that's because in Ireland we're rich. We've got an affluent economy and stuff. But look at the ones that they kind of really focused on: good health, sustainable cities, responsible consumption, climate action. But then all the others were touched on as well. So, amazing that we connected the students with all this stuff. So more examples, collecting 42 kilograms of litter from the beach. There's the full list, all kinds of stuff. Zero Hunger Project, personal hygiene kits for a church community. Amazing. Yeah. So what learnings do we take from this? Sharing and giving our students choice, inspiring our students with work that makes a difference, that inspires them, that it's not just an exam that they've got to pass, but they're actually now connecting, if you like, their learnings with real issues in the world. And if they've done this in college, they know they can do this outside of college. So we're empowering our students to be global citizens. We're building creativity. We're building adaptability. We're giving them experiences in the learning sphere that they can translate out into the other sphere. So, just to finish, as an educator, engage students with causes that matter, because that works. Offer them choice and agency because they engage. Short-term challenges can produce incredible outputs very, very quickly. And then if we capture that work into artifacts that the students can stand over and can use in finding their own jobs and stuff like that, this energizes the students, this inspires them. The feedback that I have had from this assignment and this module has been like nothing I've ever seen in my kind of teaching career previously. And I'm a novice at sustainability. I hold my head in shame and think that for many years I didn't really buy into all this green rubbish. I know now, but I know better now. Okay, but it's so important. So there we are. I've tried to keep to time. So Swati, I don't know whether that's what you wanted, but there we are anyway. and the IT chaps will have to stop the share, because as I say, I have no button to stop the share at my end. So if your IT people can stop my sharing, that would be great.
Ask the IT department for the same. Just a second.
Arvindji, please stop sharing the screen. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, sir. So, the presentation which you presented was really wonderful. And the insights which I got was that you talked about artifacts, and as well as I got to know that innovative activity which you performed among your students. It was really informative for and I also learned a lot of things from that. But so before we move forward, I just have a question that, somehow photography is being, often misunderstood as the following repetitive codes embedded in the social and aesthetic conventions. So, is it known that the art is a universal language, and also how can it be used to meet the SDGs?
That's an interesting one. I mean, one of the things that when I'm not lecturing or consulting, I run a photography training business, and this is where the question is coming from, Swati. I think art is a universal language. I think visualization. We were talking with Vani earlier on about visualization tools. You know, whether you're using Tableau or Power BI, or whether you are creating a beautiful report in Canva using good graphics and using good pictures. I think as communicators, and we have got to be better communicators, because somehow we've got to wake the world up to the SDGs and to the need for real movement on all this stuff. I mean, we're just seeing COP27, and it kind of just seemed to sink without trace in the media. We're not communicating the urgency enough yet. And I think that visualization and ways of presenting information, you can have the best information in the world, but if it's presented poorly, nobody reads it. Nobody listens to it. And that's the answer, I think, to your question, Swati, is yes, art is a universal language. Music is a universal language. And these are ways that we can reach people with key information. I mean, I teach my kids. I mean, I have a 10-year-old and an 11-year-old. If we can put a concept into a song, they learn it just like that. Yeah. So I think there's a huge connect between art and science and learning, which we don't use enough. So yeah.
Yes, sir. Even I want to share something from my experience. I was very bad at Hindi when I was as a child. I used to study Hindi till class 10th. So my teacher used to taught me Hindi with a song, that is actually, I remember that adverbs and adjectives till now. So I think very great way the way you answered it. So thank you so much, sir, for your sharing your experiences, personal experiences. We're glad you are the part of this session for today.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. So to move forward with the session, the next speaker is Dr. Nidhi Nagabhatla. She is a Senior Research Fellow and Cluster Coordinator, Climate Change and Natural Resource Program at UNU, Belgium. With 20 plus years of work experience, she has led, coordinated, and implemented transdisciplinary projects in various geographical regions of Asia, Africa, Europe, America, affiliated with Oxford, UK, Lebanese, Germany, and McMaster, Canada universities. Also, a guest professor in the University of Bolivia and visiting professor in University of Nigeria, State University of Nigeria, basically. And she has published more than 200 plus papers in different journals, chapters, and technical reports. We welcome you, ma'am. We are glad that you're the part of this session. The forum is all yours.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be speaking after this very invigorating tone-setting presentations discussed by my co-panelists. And I'm glad to be once again presenting some of my insights to my Amity and this team. And today to sync my intervention to the topic of this conference, if I may, I've chosen to focus on circular economy within the context of sustainable development goals. And I'll show in some of the slides how that can be done to synchronize efforts, not just technical and financial capacity, but also agenda settings, policy coherence. And just give me a sec to fit my presentation, and there I am. Sorry, there's some technical. I'm sorry about that. I'm not sure what's happening. Okay, sorry about the delay. I think we are ready. I'm just going to put it in the presentation mode so we can get started. I hope all is right on the screen with my voice and the screen. So I thought of focusing on some selected sustainable development goals, 12, 13, 16, 17, call it a formula if you like. But we are SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. That was a commitment that all the member states, the UN, admitted to, endorsed, and committed to implementing. Was not meant to isolate our efforts in working in silos. And somewhere SDGs are also criticized that, it has also created the silo effect. So now the momentum at UN and its related agencies are to encourage intersectionality, interlinkages between different SDGs. And within the sustainable growth concept, growth context, we have other pathways, if you like, frameworks, approaches like circular economy, blue economy, green economy. All of these narratives are feeding into the larger agenda or vision of sustainable growth for nations and for also subnational entities like states or municipalities. The Sustainable Development Goal Report, just hot off the press 2022. And if you see some of the trends that it presents in terms of responsible consumption and production. So I've just picked up SDG 12. You can see that there are very many challenges that we are very far from addressing or even understanding. And I encourage you to look at some of these data, trends, and patterns, the information that has been compiled in this report. So this is more of an information slide. Let's see how these other pathways can be a trigger or can be a leverage to implement some of the SDG goals. And circular economy is more or less a decade old. 10 years ago, some experts and agencies started giving it a definition, shape, and form as closed loop systems, primarily that in context of renewable energy. But you see, in 2013, there was another definition. There was a need for another definition because the understanding of circular economy was getting a bit more complex, was getting even more diversified. So you see the definition just in the span of 2 years included words like restorative, regenerative, end-of-life concept. It diversified from just being renewable energy. It focused on design of materials, products, systemic, and business models. So it was having a more of a touch of systemic and systems approach. So I just wanted to show that circular economy was building its scholarship in a very fast pace. And how does it enter into the Sustainable Development Goals? These goals are not some kind of a blueprint for nations or communities to just change overnight or in the span of 15 years. This is just a guideline for collective thinking, for exchange of data, information, technology, capacities between nations and between communities to understand and to address common problems. These problems can be common between Belgium and India, between Singapore and Indonesia, between Canada and Australia. So these problems are common problems. So this is just a guiding framework. What we make out of it as a country is our own agenda, how to customize it to our own context. For example, let's talk about one target 6.3, untreated wastewater and substantially increasing recycling and safe reuse globally. So this is a target that is set under SDG 6, for example. Then you have indicators on how to measure proportion of wastewater treated safely. So this is also a circular economy entry point, because when we talk about circular economy, the waste management and sectoral integration of these principles, for example, in the water management sector, seems very obvious. The emerging scholarship is encouraging that we look in closing these cycles, we look into systems thinking, we also look into social inclusiveness. I read a question in the chat where we might need different approaches for rural systems and for urban systems. Our work in Latin America region has shown that most of the waste management economy is informal. The waste pickers are the main actors or stakeholders in implementing or formalizing circular economy. So unless we bring them into the system, we really can't have a holistic approach to implementing circular economy. And I'm sure there are parallels in Africa and Asia to the example I gave about from Latin America. And why do we actually need to shift to these kind of mindset? Because we are taking too much from the earth, we are wasting too much, and we are emitting too much. And this has been set in various reports globally, right from the IPCC report of 2020, right from the risk report, where we have crossed the tipping points or thresholds of many natural systems. So I think these are things that we have to reinforce in our education, in our policy, both at sectoral level and at different multiple levels of governance systems. Suppose you look again back to the water sector. I've just chosen one sector to make the discourse or my intervention a bit more specific. You can see that many regions are trying to create their own customized approach, building on circular economy, building on sustainable development frameworks and other frameworks that talk about integration. And I can talk about the water vision from Arab region, where they are taking a clear note of ESG principles, that from a business lobby, they are taking note of sectoral integration with the water sector through SDG, clean energy through SDG 7, and SDG 12 on the larger value chains from different businesses of production and consumption. From the water sector, again, why do we have to emphasize on something as fundamental as water? Because if you see on this global map that I have taken from the SDG 6 data, a report launched last year, you see that only a part of the world is treating substantial amount of wastewater before it enters in any kind of system. And this data has been compiled by taking the information that was submitted by countries to SDG tracker system. So there might be a possibility that some of the countries are not submitting enough information, or they are actually not having means to collect that information, even if they are treating the wastewater. So the overall, the global picture is much more red than green. And you can see the distribution of how wastewater is treated in different regions of the world. In Australia and New Zealand, of course, topping the graph with North Africa and Western Asia following up. Of course, you can, with the European and North American standards on water quality back to the system is pretty high. Latin America is catching up, and Eastern and Southeastern Asia also has significant amount, more than 50%. A very significant point in circular economy and SDG interfacing is the role of private sector, is the role of business sector, is the role of the market value of circular economy, and making this a bit more of an inclusive dialogue and towards a sustainability vision at the global level. So there is a lot of research being done on estimations, projections on how the circular economy market may look like. Some of them you can see on the screen. Some of the sectors that have already been looking into it by waste type, by end user, by region. Again, some information for reference, and several of the vendors that we already know or been use their products on a daily basis, Adidas, Zara, Sony, they already have a strategy that they have put publicly on their on their website in the open space on integration of circular economy and sustainable development goals in their operations. Circular economy back in the wastewater management sector. I'm shifting between water and the overall business things, because water is an input for many businesses. So whatever happens in the water sector from an academic, from a research viewpoint, is then serves as a feed for businesses to take some of these approaches. And from the water management sector, we put out an approach in some of our publications, activities, and research in the past 5 years. We've been working on this topic, and from a resource recovery, the usual keywords or the usual dimensions that we would like to see: the recovery cost, the efficiency, innovations if they can fit in, and then integration, and some of the dimensions that we can keep in mind. So again, this is for information and reference. I just wanted to show some of the frameworks and simple pathways that we are outlining for integration of this thinking into sectors and sectoral policies. And some of the publications, as you can see, that give us the framework to then take the visioning exercise into into creating concepts and frameworks for implementation. And some of the researchers from UNU have created a PESTEL framework. Again, this information is available online. The framework talks about several barriers, several opportunities, strengths, but also challenges. And feel free to use it, to customize it to your own projects. But why do we need these frameworks? Because if we give a vision to a stakeholder or to government people or to business people, you can't expect them to derive their own frameworks. They can, of course, if they have capacity, they have R&D divisions. But for small scale businesses, for implementation of other governance measures, if you have a framework, a guiding framework, then it's more easy for uptake and for people to customize, the stakeholders to customize it to their need. And a lot of research gives a backing for some of the frameworks that we propose to serve as an evidence, because evidence-based policy making, science-based assessments for policy change, these are common terms that you use in steering sustainability at the high level of governance. Global circular economy market, as you've seen, is a good entry point for ensuring the sustainable development goals are part of larger sectors, many sectors, different sectors. And the big challenge of managing waste gets integrated through the circular economy pathway into the SDGs. Though we have SDG 12 to take care of that, but then in my formula, you see I've mentioned SDG 16 because we need institutional support. We need SDG 17 because we need cooperation. So harmonizing the values that some of these SDGs bring on table remains super important for realizing the Agenda 2030 that we have identified, we have agreed, and we have acknowledged, and we want to realize it as global community. UNEP are one of our agencies, and with environmental focus, has also doing its own bit to understand, to bring out documentation, to simplify how to build circularity in 4 steps on your screen, but the report is available if you just Google it. And the framework on shifting from just the reuse or recycle perspective, but making it a bit more integrated in remanufacturing, refurbishing, repairing, reducing, recycling. So sort of increasing the ambit of circularity that we knew from a conventional understanding. The World Economic Forum have also taken additional step to integrate it with climate change, adaptation, management, and policy making, especially from an energy context, from reducing risks, from building cooperation. So some of the agencies have taken a proactive step in integration of circularity, circular economy frameworks into different agendas that they have been mandated with. This example is of particular interest to some of the participants who are with us today. The World Business Council have created a water circularity metrics just for the water sector. But you see the intention here, the intention of the businesses in the private sector to be a part of key stakeholders to actively involve in achieving sustainability agenda. Water circular, quick example of what they are doing in terms of the matrices, the frameworks, and for the water sector, you can see how to measure percentage water circularity. And again, these guiding frameworks are important because they at least give us some direction, but it's also equally important to customize and to use them for your own context or at the country level. I would like to close on my intervention with this global alliance on circular economy and resource efficiency that UNEP and UNIDO have supported the European Commission that was launched in 2021 with the number of countries, as you see on the screen, Canada, Chile, India, Japan, Peru, and many other countries who have agreed to be a part of this alliance, to work together in exchange of information, data, technologies, processes, innovations to ensure that circular economy becomes a part of the sustainability agenda. They have a plan in place. The European Union have already integrated some of these guidelines into the European Green Deal, which is again a very big, ambitious agenda at the regional level. But this is also a trigger or a stimulus for other countries and regions to take note of, to integrate it in their existing frameworks. As we heard, some of these frameworks are already in motion in India. And interestingly, they have identified an implementation plan, again, for reference on how and when and these interventions or these policies can be plugged into existing legislations, into directives of governance. So some of the reference is on your screen for, again, taking note of. And I think with that, I just want to close my intervention saying that we need the intention, we need knowledge, we need understanding to ensure that circularity, circular economy becomes a part of the SDG implementation plan through various measures, institutional support, cooperation, and collaboration. Thank you, and over.
Thank you.
Yes, before just going for another panelist, another speaker, first of all, I would like to thank Nidhi Madam for giving such an elaborate, insightful, insightful into this, why these sustainable development goals should be followed. Now, this basic argument that why this SDG goal is followed lies in the fact that what has been taken in and what has been given out, there is a gross imbalance between them, a wide gap between them. And this gap is locking much of wealth into it. And I just make out through her
Sir, sorry to interrupt you. I'm really sorry, sir. Actually, the closing session time was 3:30.
Okay. Just 1 minute.
Yeah, just please, sir.
Just in 1 minute. And unless and until this gap, what has been taken in and what has been given out, this gap is filled in through the circular economy, reliance on renewable energy. I don't think the larger wealth that has been locked into it can be unleashed. So this basic argument, I think this should be disseminated along with this SDG goal. Only then it could be implemented. So with this note, I would really like, personally very thankful to Nidhi Madam for providing me a clue to this argument behind this, pursuing these SDG goals. So
we do have another question, but I think there's no time for it. Mr. Ankit Jha has posted a question. Do we have time, Dr. Vani?
I'm really sorry, ma'am, because we are already running late. Nidhi, ma'am, you can answer the question in the chat box, if there is one question.
Yeah, it's there in the chat box.
Yeah, it's there in the chat
Mr.
box.
Ankit has asked a question.
Thank you.
That the climate migrants have been invisible for many years on the migration and climate debates. So what are the global impacts of this kind of migration, and is it a cause of concern?
Do you want me to answer on the chat or really?
Ma'am, whatever is convenient to you.
Well, I think that's a very good point and often a very under-reflected dimension in sustainability. In fact, global migration issue did not even find a place in the Sustainable Development Goals, except for SDG 10.6 target. So I think it's been very under-reflected in the SDG portfolio. But note that in 2015, around 20 million people were displaced due to climate-related disasters. The problem is in identification of people who have been displaced either voluntarily or forced displacement with climate as a trigger. Because when you ask migrants why they have uh, when you do a question or assessment with the migrants, on the front end, what you see is the cause is economics. I didn't have enough food. I could not earn my livelihood. So you have to go 3 levels back to understand the causality. And we have been working on this with IOM, one of our agencies, International Organization for Migration, to understand the causalities. And unless we understand the causalities directly or indirectly, how climate change, water crisis triggers migration or forced displacement, will not be able to make a global case. Ankit, I would suggest you to look into Global Compact for Migration that was launched in December of 2021, which is a global governance tool to understand the impacts of different causal factors on migration, and climate was included in 2 articles, but not to the extent that it is a matter of concern. But I'm keeping it short, but I'll put some references in the chat.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for answering the question from the delegate. And also, I would like to thank you the way you have briefed us about the circular economy with respect to Belgium and India, and a few more to name, as well as you also explain about the terms of global, you also explain it in terms of globally connected world, and the way you presented the research management projects in context to the water management and in context to the stakeholders and the government frameworks. That was really informative, PPT as well as a presentation from your side. Thank you so much, ma'am. So,
Ma'am, just a bit of interruption here. Dr. Nidhi, would you be okay with sharing this PPT? Because
Sure, yes, I'll send it to you and you can share as you like.
Share it with us. Thank you.
Ms. Swati, can we take forward because we are getting late and
yes,
Ms.
ma'am.
Vishali Sinha has another meeting, so we can just start with the validity session.
Yes, ma'am, right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. So moving forward with the valedictory session for today, now may I request Professor Dr. Vikas Madhukar, Honorable Pro Vice Chancellor, Co-Patron and Conference Chairperson, Dean Faculty of Management Studies and Director, Amity Business School, for addressing the audience and presenting the conference report. Professor Dr. Vikas Madhukar is specialized in finance and strategy and
Swati, it's all right. It's all right, right? Let's not go through the profile. Thank you, Swati, for inviting me. And a very good afternoon to all our guests on the valedictory session. Ms. Vishali Sinha. Yeah, Vishali. I was just trying to see you, Vishali.
Hi, I'm
very
here.
good afternoon, and warm welcome to Amity Business School, Amity University, Gurgaon, and our another guest of honor, Dr. Kumresh C. Mishra. Very good afternoon to you, Mishra ji, and very warm welcome to Amity University, Gurgaon. My colleague, Dr. Sanjana Vij. Thank you, Dr. Sanjana, for inviting Dr. Mishra and Ms. Vishali Sinha to this very important valedictory session of our conference. And my colleague, faculty members, dear students. At Amity University, Haryana, we are truly committed to the cause of sustainability. We are a university which leads by example. And our university is one which has truly contributed to the sustainability agenda. The testimony of our commitment to sustainability is clearly reflected in the fact that our university has been ranked at number 32 in SDG 7, which is affordable and clean energy, and ranked 63 globally in SDG 6 Clean Water and Sanitization by THE Impact Ranking 2022. And I'm proud to share that our university campus is the first university of India and second of Asia to be awarded as a LEED Platinum Green Building Certification. There are many best practices which we are following at Amity University. Some of the important best practices include that AUH is a zero waste water discharge campus and all wastewater is recycled through effluent treatment plant and sewage treatment plant at the university. We have energy efficient building with exposure of natural sunlight, installation of solar plant to meet about, we also meet our 20% of our energy requirement internally. And the organic waste collected from farmhouse is disposed through biogas production and composing infrastructure available at the campus. We are a gender sensitive campus. If I talk about in terms of the ratio of male and female employee, it is 50%, and so as the case with our students, are more than 50% of our students are female student, and the aspect of sustainability is clearly reflecting in the governance of the university, the kind of curricula we have been following, the kind of program courses we are offering to our students, and the kind of overall policy framework what we have in the university. So this important conference, which is on sustainable management practices for inclusive growth, issues, challenges, and strategies, we had received an overwhelming response across industry and the academia. In this conference, we had one inaugural session, and then we have 10 technical session where the paper what we have received on different tracks like sustainable marketing services, digital and social media practices, sustainable HR practices, sustainable production, operation management, banking and insurance sector, sustainable green technology, sustainability for financial management service practices, sustainable practices, information technology, international business and agriculture, sustainable management, entrepreneurship, sustainable quality education practices, sustainable management and agriculture, sustainable management and practices and smart cities. And we had a paper presentation on all these tracks. And during, as I was mentioning, in last 2 days, we have more than 10 technical session. On day one, we had one inaugural session and 2 offline. The first day of the conference was offline as the conference was organized in hybrid mode. So yesterday was complete offline. We had the inaugural session, very good inaugural session where we had leaders from industry. They spoke on the various aspects of the sustainable management practices. We have keynote speaker, Professor Kaushik Ranjan Bandyopadhyay, professor from Indian Institute of Management, Lucknow, and Dr. Mukesh Khare, professor from Indian Institute of Technology. So where in our keynote addresses, we had taken the 2 best professors, those they are expert and authority in this area. One is from the leading management institute and leading technology institute of a country, and they both have very well presented their management and technical aspect with respect to sustainability. They have talked about the kind of issues and challenges which are there and what is a way forward. Then we had discussion by our guest of honor, where we Dr. Atul Sood, who is a director, legal regulatory government affair from Trifity Van Mill India, Mr. Gopal Krishnan, who is a managing director of GBCI Southeast Asia and MENA market. And GBCI was our industry partner as well. Ms. Anu Mehta had corporate social responsibility from Honda Cars India Limited. Dr. Y. Suresh Reddy, CSR lead and head from SRF Foundation. And Mr. Nitesh Jain, who is a partner Grant Thornton Bharat, ex-director management consulting KPMG India, have shared their views on sustainability. Then in post-lunch session, we had 2 technical sessions with 18 papers presentation and 2 online session with 24 paper presentations. So in yesterday's session, apart from inaugural session, we had 42 paper presented by the different academician and research scholars on the theme of the conference. Then today, since morning, we had 5 online technical session where close to 60 research paper presentations made by the different academicians, practitioners, and research scholar. And just before this session, we have concluded very important discussion by our international speaker on the theme of the conference. And now we are into the valedictory session with our 2 esteemed guests of honor present in this session. So overall, the 17th International Conference on Sustainable Management Practices for Inclusive Growth, Issues, Challenges, and Strategy. I see this conference as a great success, and I feel that the kind of objective with which this conference was initiated and organized, and the kind of speakers and the kind of research papers, the kind of deliberation, what we had made in last 2 days, they are really meaningful and contributing in the agenda of the conference for what the conference was organized. And I am greatly thankful to my colleague, especially our industry partner, Confederation of Indian Industry, and Green Building Council of India, and our main sponsors of this conference, Uno Minda Limited, for their wholehearted support in organizing this conference success. Not taking much of time, I'm handing over this to the Master of Ceremony to take the proceeding of valedictory session further. Thank you very much. Thank you for your kind support and your appreciation in organizing this conference. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much, sir, for presenting a very comprehensive report of the conference. Now the next speaker is Ms. Vaishali Nigam Sinha, Chief Sustainability Officer at Renew Power. Ms. Vaishali was recently conferred with the prestigious ET Energy Woman of the Year Award. In 2022, Business Insider named her among a global list of 100 people transforming business. She was also listed among Asia's most influential women in renewable energy and as an influential woman business leader by the Solar Quarter magazine. She was facilitated for her outstanding contribution towards women empowerment by CSR Journal in July 2019 and also recognized as being among us India's top 25 impactful CSR leaders by the India CSR Network in April 2019. In 2019, CEO Today magazine conferred the Businesswoman of the Year award for her achievements as a woman professional. She was also a national finalist at the Niti Aayog Women Transforming India Awards 2018, finishing amongst top 2% of women across India. Recently, Ms. Vaishali was also featured in She the People's 40 over 40 list. We welcome you, ma'am, to the Amity Business School, Amity University, Haryana. Now the forum is all yours, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vaishali Sinha. Thank you for accepting our invite and be here on this great platform. We are so happy to see you here. And welcome to Shri Kamlesh Mishra ji. Welcome, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Over to you.
Thank you, Vani ji. Thank you, Sanjana ji, and to all the faculty members, to the distinguished guests who are present here, the students. And I just want to thank Vani for giving away my age and really embarrassing me for that very long introduction, but really appreciate the effort all of you have made It was a delight listening to all the accomplishments of this event all of you organized. At a more personal level, I also quite envy the academia lifestyle, which is so wonderful. And every time I am with students and professors, I feel like going to that world, which is so beautiful, so fulfilling. So really envy, and also I'm very grateful for what each one of you do for all of us and the younger generation. So with that, I would like to also start by thanking you once again for inviting me to speak at this session on a topic which is really dear, and I really deeply care about this topic, which is the topic of sustainable practices for inclusive growth. So, often when I am in conversations, and I'm at events and panels, people say, oh, we don't have enough manpower to meet our 500 gigawatt goals. And I often say to them that we may not have manpower, but we do definitely have the other stronger power, which is the woman power. So we really need to make this growth, and that's just one way in which we can make this growth inclusive. There are many other dimensions to it, but as a woman, I do feel that we should keep talking about how many opportunities there exist for women to get engaged in this huge once in a lifetime or millennial or opportunity, which is around the energy transition, sustainable development, and climate related opportunities, because it really is the biggest challenge, isn't it, the world is facing. And we always feel as entrepreneurs and people who are trying to identify value creation solutions to problems, that there's a huge opportunity, not only for women, for youth, and for the entire humanity to solve this crisis for the next generation and for all of us as well. So as we move ahead in this journey, I'd like to kind of share this with everybody, that let's not just think of making this transition just a green transition. Let's make it just and green. Okay, so there's a huge difference, and I think we all need to aspire to work towards that goal. And I also want to share that it's not really gloom and doom. We are at a wonderful time where people have embraced after acknowledging that there is a problem. Sometimes the biggest problem is that we have not acknowledged that there is a problem. And so once we have all acknowledged that there is a problem, now the whole world is at work to solve this problem. And that is the good news, right? But let's not pat ourselves on our backs too much as yet, because what the world we are living in right now and the present is quite grave as well. So, let me give you some examples how climate change is really becoming quite a non-tacklable challenge, if I could put it that way. It's really leading to, irreversible situations in our life. If you look around the world, there was a time where you had, climate-related events which were occurring once in a decade, in a century. Now, similar events are occurring thrice in a year across the globe. Whether we talk about the the sort of fires we are seeing in Australia, in California, and other parts of the world, where forests which are the size of a country like Syria are getting burnt. People are losing lives, people are getting displaced, and it is pretty damaging. We look at severe weather events like what we saw flooding in Pakistan. We saw that in July 21 became the warmest month ever on our earth, ever. That's quite a data point, which tells us how severe the situation is. And so we must all get to work. whether it is, and we are not going to get to work individually. While we do have to work at an individual level and contribute at the individual level, but this is a phenomenon which requires attention of the globe, which we are getting. We are getting capital, we are getting policy engagement, within countries, across countries. So we are moving in the right direction, but there is much which needs to be solved. So climate change is not only impacting weather-related patterns, but it's also impacting overall the way we live, right? If you look at water, water, as I mentioned, is one big issue where floods are happening, people are getting displaced. When we look at food, there is food scarcity, food insecurity, and the number of people suffering from acute food insecurity has increased from about 135 million in 2019 to 345 million in 82 countries by June 22. So if we look at all of these things and then look at the impact of all of these on human health, right? Whether it is the amount of, number of lives which are being lost due to weather conditions, whether it's even the pandemic. I mean, we went through the pandemic over the last couple of years, which was, quite traumatic for the world at large. The most vulnerable groups, which are children and elderly, have been suffering the most. And but it seems to me that we as a current generation don't really realize that there is more to be done, and there are multiple gaps which exist, and we all need to get to work to solve these. And this can only happen if we take personal and individual responsibilities. For example, if we look at our leadership, I think we are living in a country which is very committed. I think our country, India, has had the most deeply entrenched sustainability driven value system. And that is the good news. Whether it is the kind of food we have eaten historically, whether it's the kind of health and well-being and mental wellness lifestyles we have, we are in a good space. And to a certain extent, it's about going back to our roots and ensuring we commit ourselves to a sustainable way of living. And I have seen that when we make sustainability as a way of life, and we are not looking to search for a journey which will result in sustainable practices, but the journey itself becomes sustainable. That's when we can achieve the goals which we have to, kind of reach to be able to solve this big climate crisis, whether it is the net zero goals, whether it is the 2030 goals we've all set for ourselves as countries, as institutions, etc. Perhaps we should set net zero goals for ourselves as individuals. And just as we say that it's not about just setting the goals, but it's also about identifying systematic and scientific ways to measure these, the progress we're making towards achieving these goals, right? So I think it's just about having the commitment not only towards ourselves, but also to the communities and the ecosystem we live in, because at the end of the day, that is what's going to get us across the line. So what is the right course? So the right course is, of course, as we discussed, that, we can set net zero goals, we can look at a just and an equitable transition, which is super critical. And so, there are different ways in which we can do it. So a just transition for different parts of the world means different things. In certain parts of the world, it's about job parity. Whereas in certain parts of the world, like in the global south, it's really about taking care of people whose life is getting destroyed, right? Because they have to migrate, they're losing homes, they're losing lives, whether it's because of flooding, whether it's because of any other reason. So let's define it and let's understand it and let's address it. Justice is also about the trajectory of the journeys of different countries in different parts of the world. What is the developmental journey they've undertaken and what have they done to impact the planet versus the other countries which are beginning to take those, take that journey. And so how do we balance all of this out, right? So I think we as individuals, as institutions really need to think about it. And I think the younger generation really has a big role to play by getting engaged. And because there are so many challenges, as I said, that it's important for us to get engaged, So let's look at how we can get engaged. Let me tell you a little bit about ourselves at Renew. We are working on a project where we are working with women who've been involved in very, very difficult activities in the remotest parts of our country. Like they've been doing activities like salt pan work, which is very damaging to your health. And these are in parts, they work in parts of India where large companies like ourselves are setting up solar farms and wind farms and other renewable energy projects. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to reskill them and give them the opportunity to be able to work in areas to convert them and reskill them to become solar technicians. So that is what we are doing as a company. What is that students can do? So a lot of you are in the NCR area, right? A lot of the students who are perhaps attending or perhaps to the professors who are here who can share this with students, that, we've had the Badarpur plant, say in New Delhi, which shut down. That's a good thing for pollution, but that's really a bad thing for people who've lost livelihoods and jobs there. What is it that we can do to get engaged and engage the workforce there, right? As students, as learners, we can play a role to run projects, to volunteer, and make a difference. When we get engaged firsthand, that's when we realize and feel and own a problem. So I would urge all the students here to think about this as you get educated, that there are a lot of opportunities for you to take individual steps, but also there are a lot of opportunities. I mean, the sky is the limit. If you look at the kind of opportunities which exist for young, brilliant minds like the students who are there at Amity University, there are jobs in the digital area, there are jobs in communication, because, sustainability is a lot of it is about communication. How well can you communicate the problem? How well can you amplify solutions? And so there are a lot of opportunities there, huge amounts of opportunities for flexible work through digital technology and digitalization in the fourth industrial revolution. All of them are centered around sustainability, climate change related solutions, and related areas. Strategy, finance, human resources, the traditional opportunities remain because the number of entrepreneurial ventures, the number of large companies and the multinationals are all looking to employ smart professionals. They're happy to reskill them. So to the extent you know what you're passionate about, because it's all about the passion which will get you across the line. There are numerous opportunities to get engaged in this area. So that's an area I think we should all be looking out for. As I said, let us not rely on technology to become sustainable, but let sustainability drive technology. That's when we're going to see a different world. That's when we're going to be to see a world which is green, which is going to be preserved for the future generation, which I think is the biggest responsibility on us as adults who have utilized a lot of the material sources which have been made available to us. 80% of India will be built by 2070-80. That's a large part of India, which is yet to be built. So let's build it responsibly. Let's build it with a sustainable design in our mind so that what we see then is something which is pleasing, something we are proud of. And all I want to say is it's the students of universities like Amity who are going to be the one who are going to be making a difference. And it's many other students like them across the world who are going to own this transition and transformation, which we all so much need. So all the very best, and thank you for having me here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for explaining us very well that why our forefathers, we are always asked that our forefathers should preserve the resources for the future generation, and explaining about sustainability so well. And I also liked what you said that we don't need a green transition, but yes, a transition which is not only green, but just. So that really left an impact on me as well, because and the way and something you talked about women empowerment at Renew. So working as an women empowerment social worker under Girl Up Foundation UN campaign. So I really felt very enlightened the way you're working, and by seeing your profile, the way you have been, given us the talk on the women empowerment as well as sustainability. Thank you so much, ma'am, for encouraging the students as well as panelists over here.
All the
So
best.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
It's a
Thank you so
pleasure.
much, Ms. Vaishali, for your wonderful, impactful, and fruitful presentation. It was really enlightening, and you have spoken about net zero, and you have spoken that it is not just about setting the goals, but also to achieving them, and various other things which you have talked about. It was really inspiring. Thank you so much for being with us for such a short time. We would definitely invite you here in face-to-face programs. So we look forward to have you in in those programs as well. So thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
thank you so much, ma'am. Moving forward with the session, we have our next speaker for today. He is none other than Mr. Dr. Kumaresh Mishra.
Kumaresh Mishra.
Kumaresh Mishra. I'm really sorry, sir. I'm really sorry. Sir is presently Director, Indian Chemical Council of India. He is a former Deputy Secretary General of United Nations Habitat Third Conference and has more than 35 years of professional experience, including United Nations, academia, private sector, and government, both at the implementation and policy level. Sir is working as a member of Indian Administrative Service, Bihar cadre, and he has worked from the field level implementing poverty programs in Bihar and districts now in Jharkhand, as well as at the policy level in the Prime Minister's Office of India. He is working also as a joint secretary for chemicals in Government of India. He has managed the interface with the chemical industry and was a focal point for Rotterdam and Stockholm conventions. He actively promoted investments in the sector, including developing the policy guideline on the petroleum, chemicals, and petrochemicals investment regions. So the forum is all yours, please.
Thank you, Swati. Thank you, Dr. Sanjana.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. We are so grateful that you are here. We are
it's a privilege and an honor to be here.
And thank you to Aarti and Sandeep Saxena ji, who has connected us with you.
Absolutely. So I was thanking Sandeep as well.
Yes.
I have been always, on and off academician. And of course, once again, I have to repeat, I'm still not a doctor. I aborted my doctorate program halfway in US at Boston University, and therefore what they call as ABD, all but dissertation. That you do your comprehensives, you do all your coursework, you don't do your dissertation. Why? Because my focus was on implementation as an administrative IAS officer from the field level. I think I don't need the doctorate degree for teaching or anything. So I came back. Now, in terms of the evolution, I'm grateful that I'm at the Amity Business School. I did a business school course way back between 73 and 75, which is almost 50 years back. That was at IIM Ahmedabad. We didn't talk about sustainability there. We talked about courses in marketing, in finance, in production, HR. Sustainability was not an issue, at least at the ground or discussion level. But internationally, that discussion had started. So 1972, you had this big conference in Stockholm, which resulted in creation of UNEP. And once I was reading about it, and I felt so happy that the then Indian Prime Minister did attend that conference. Then what was it? The focus was on environment. So the environmental issues were more challenging. So you focus on environment. Then suddenly, mid-70s, if you remember, there was this whole focus on making a frontal attack on poverty, that you have to get people out of poverty. So that was the issue in terms of a developmental issue. Then I go into the field in a place, and that's how you see the challenge. I go to a field in a district which was predominantly tribal and very nicely heavily forested. You know, one of the, they say, classic book style forest is Saranda Forest. It's close to Jamshedpur. And there you see the challenge that on one side, you have this poverty, dismal level of living. And on the other side, because you don't take care of the man, there was also the issues of cutting of forests, which was damaging the environment. How do you handle the two together? Environment and development. And then you gradually see it moving. 1987, the Brundtland Commission comes in and then defines sustainable development. And that's how sustainability comes as part of the discourse. Once you have sustainability as part of the discourse, then you have the Rio Conference, 1992. So then you set up a sort of agenda and all the activities, even targets and everything. But you don't have any measure of really measuring and ensuring that implementation takes place. Then you come back, then you have the Millennium Development Goals. Now that had a limited set of targets. And then again, you have the discussion, open-ended working group set up in the United Nations to focus on sustainable development. And that's where they respond in terms of the Sustainable Development Goals, which was adopted in 2015. So what the Sustainable Development Goals that we see today is actually a journey. It's an evolution over the years. And coming to this point, then at the same time, you had the climate impacts that people spoke about, that the climate impact is also taking place. So you had your UNFCCC coming up with COP every year. And we had, of course, very distinguished person from India also who was heading UNFCCC. So the challenges of sustainable development came to the fore, and you had the heads of states adopting this Sustainable Development Goals. The challenge is not in discussion. And the challenge is, what do you do about it? How do you implement it? If some of you had listened to the opening speech of President Sisi of Egypt at the beginning of COP27, the last 3 words he said was implementation, implementation, and implementation. And that has been the huge challenge, and we still do not have a kind of I would say, serious answers to that, or a coordinated answer to that. On the academic side, on the discussion side, on the international forums, we are talking a lot about it. On the other side, in presenting the national reports, also we are monitoring and committed. But again, this is an area which requires huge kind of challenge. Now, in terms of the work that I did, I was directly responsible for SDG 11, for coordinating in terms of the purpose and focus on SDG 11, that is on making our habitat sustainable, making our cities inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. And again, this is something part of the evolution. Till Sustainable Development Goals 2015, urbanization was never on the table, was not part of the agenda. So urbanization was included because suddenly you find this huge movement of population moving into the urban arena. Now it had 2 things, that urbanization was creating about almost 80% of GDP, but was also creating 70% of the carbon footprints. So you had to deal with that. Then, of course, the urban poverty was there. Of course, the Indian situation is still different. We still have a large part of rural population, which is migrating slowly, maybe 2.5%. But the challenges of sustainability and inclusive development, inclusivity that you mentioned, remains over there. We don't have ready answers. Of course, we have given a target of 2030. The UN set the target of 2030. And again, these are very challenging things. It has been very difficult to identify the matrices. How do you measure the movement from what you have targeted to what you have achieved? So as a matter of fact, there was a huge kind of a debate on that. So finally, in terms of SDG 11, when I was heading as Deputy Secretary General of UN Habitat Secretariat, which does a conference every 20 years to focus on sustainable building up the new urban agenda for sustainable cities, inclusive sustainable cities. And that happened in 2016 in Quito, Ecuador. And you come up with the new urban agenda, so we have that. We have the Sustainable Development Goals, we have the Article 11. How do you implement it? What is the national implementation plans? Now everyone is filing it. You have the need, and yet you don't know where you are going to get your resources, and you are all struggling with that. And in the Indian situation, we have the additional challenge. Unlike many of the Western countries, where the local government, the city government are much more important and they have much more resources, our Indian sort of third-tier governance is much, much harder. But what we are seeing is, and that's what we did, because now with Indian Chemical Council, the chemical industry in India, with which I'm associated currently, they are already moving towards action on their own. Now, they are not part of the 6 major sectors identified for major carbon footprint. Chemical sector, of course, generally we say, oh, of course, there is a fertilizer, there is pesticide, there are chemicals in our food. So that is the bad sector. But it's also the sector that can really come up with green chemistry, with more natural sort of inputs, and then ensure that there are fewer carbon footprints. And therefore, the chemical industry in India has started from 2019, of which I was involved, on ICC Sustainability Conclave, which is at least it's the chemical industry's answer towards promoting sustainability. Now, we heard about UNEP, and we saw, and of course, that this conference that we do is in collaboration with UNEP. We do this in collaboration with International Council of Chemical Associations, which is a conglomeration of all the major chemical associations globally. And we look at all the items. And what we are trying to do, and that's what needs to be done, especially in your, of course, one is the student level, whom we are sensitizing in terms of SDGs. We saw Professor Houghton talking about the students who are not even familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals, and then he brings them up. But there's also another set that we need to work on in terms of the executive development programs and others who would actually start implementing it. One is, of course, your sustainable lifestyle is very important. Then we talk of circularity. You know, we have been talking of circularity, and in terms of circular economy, one of the things that we also started doing it in certain regulatory action. We said, no, we will ensure that single-use plastics, we are going to restrict its use. Then, of course, we get COVID, which to some extent gives a setback to use of single-use plastic, because that set of plastics also had certain qualities that were essential in terms of protecting human lives. So that did give a setback. But one thing that we are doing, and especially in terms of the call by the Prime Minister, in terms of the Panchamrit, the target that he has given, that we are really moving towards the net zero that he's announced in terms of 2070. So we have to be realistic. One set, of course, is that we have to move slowly, but we have to move surely. And how are we going to measure it? And that is very important. Of course, Niti Aayog does a measurement in terms of the national achievements, but that is something we need to share and we need to publicize more. Somehow, for example, when we talk about matrices, we don't talk about it. So we do need to look at measuring what achievements we are doing. What you see is that we have many solutions. Everyone has a solution. There's nobody who doesn't have a solution who can say, oh, you do this, our environment will improve, sustainability will improve. They may not know the word sustainability, but they will know that if I do not use a throwaway plastic plate, I use a regular plate which I wash, I'm more sustainable. So the idea is there, but then how do you take it forward? And at the individual level is yes, but we also need to bring out the industry. And that's where the business schools and others can play a role. You interact with industry. You have your executive development programs. You have your programs in terms of you even send your students in terms of newer hirees, and who if they're ingrained with ideas of sustainability, they will say that yes, we need to be sustainable. And one of the things that you'll see, industry is changing. Industry is no longer talking about that no, sustainability is an add-on. No, they realize that sustainability is an integral part of their business. As a matter of fact, one of the conference themes that we did last year was sustainability makes economic sense. And in the chemical industry or in some of the other industries also, industry is not only looking at their own footprint, what you call as a scope 1 emissions and others, but you also look at scope 2 and scope 3, which means what is the footprint from your suppliers, what are the footprints from your consumers. So you have to focus on that. The companies are also looking at identifying what is happening in the supply chain. So you have companies like Together for Sustainability, TFS or EcoVadis, all of them you have. So the industry is moving, there are actions being taking place, but I'm glad that in the business school, you have sustainability as a course. You're focusing on sustainability and send them with ideas that when they go to, when they're hired, that they do talk to their companies and others that, yes, I've come from the business school. I know all about marketing. Yes, I will market. Yes, I will. I know about finance. I'll make money for you. But I will always do what the EU Green Deal talks about, safe and sustainable by design. When we make a product, whatever we do, we start off by sustainable design. We are no longer talking about cradle to grave, but we are talking about cradle to cradle. So we need to move forward in that direction. And I'm happy that Amity Business School is pushing the sustainability. And I was saying that it's 17th year. I'm still on the 4th year. We started in 2019 for the chemical industry. We do it in Delhi. 20 and for second and third editions, we had to do it online. Then again, we did the fourth edition recently last month on 17th and 18th of November. So, and I don't know whether Sandeep was there or not. We did invite him, and Blitz was a partner in that. So it's a journey. It's a journey of togetherness, and every bit counts. That is the thing. So I really want to thank Amity School for bringing this, doing this international conference, bringing so much together, the idea of sustainability, and we spread the word. We do march forward. We know that it's not going to happen today. As they say that even if you control your carbon emissions today, it will not have an impact in the next 50 years. So the challenge is there. But yes, we need to move on, and we're happy that we are in it together. So thank you, Amity. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share some thoughts with you, and wishing all the students, faculty members the best in the journey towards sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you
Well,
so much, Mr. Mishra, for your blessings to us. And it was a wonderful and inspiring address. You have highlighted beautifully few points like sustainable lifestyle, circular economy, net zero. Sustainable is the integral part of our life. And lastly, we need to be realistic and we need to be slow but sure. Beautifully, sir, you have explained, and you have really enlightened the with your this flame of knowledge on sustainable development goals. So we are so grateful. Thank you so much. Over to you, Vani.
Thank you, ma'am. Swati, please continue.
Well, thank you so much, sir, for enlightening us. To move forward with the session, I would sincerely like to thank all the speakers and the guests for sharing their knowledge and research on such a crucial theme of sustainable management practices. Thank you so much, all the speakers. We are delighted that you joined the session and you enlightened us with your knowledge and the research work. Now, next, I would like to call upon Professor Dr. Vikas Madhukar, Pro Vice Chancellor, Amity University, Haryana, to announce the Best Paper Award.
Yeah, thank you, Swati. And once again, I extend my thanks to Dr. Kamlesh Mishra for such a wonderful insight to the sustainability. And yes, I mean, it's true that the Amity has embraced sustainability from the very beginning. The day we have established this campus in the 2010, and it was the vision and mission of our Honorable Chancellor to imbibe sustainability in each and every processes of the university. Thank you so much.
Dr. Vikas, Mr. Kamlesh Mishra has lots of questions as far as Amity Business School is concerned, and he is very curious to know that when it was started and how many students. So we would like to call him personally one day, and then we can explain all those things to him in
Yeah,
detail.
absolutely, very true, Dr. Sanjana. And maybe when we are starting with our new session in
Yes.
February, so we may plan a session of Dr. Mishra with the students. I mean, he can suggest the topic on which he would like to speak and interact. Dr. Mishra, at Amity Business School, we are running undergraduate and postgraduate program in business management, commerce, and economics. So if I talk about our postgraduate program, we have MBA program which is leading to the specialization where students have an option to opt specialization from the second semester onward, and there are large basket of elective and different specializations. So a student can opt either a single specialization and can have expertise as an advanced major, or a student can have a major and minor to specialization. Then we have industry specific MBA program. So like our MBA banking and finance is very specialized from the very first semester, where the students are prepared for banking as well as finance sector. Then we have MBA hospital and healthcare management, where it is something where the program is in collaboration with our medical school, because the medical school is offering MBA hospital administration program, Master of Hospital Administration. So we have a mandatory hospital visit for the students. So every week, one day the students are spending in hospitals. We tie up with the Fortis, Artemis, Paras Hospital. Then we have MBA in Business Analytics, what we have started last year only. And you know that analytic is one area which is coming up very fast because of the digitization of technology. Then last year we have actually took this initiative of starting MBA in Sustainability Management. So although we have a very small batch of 5 students in sustainability, but the program is very robust in terms of curriculum. We have tie-up with the foreign collaboration. The US Presidio Business School is our foreign partner. Presidio is a prestigious management school of US, and their sustainability program is #1 in United States. So we have collaboration. The curriculum is jointly designed with Presidio, and the faculty members of Residuos are taking few courses for the student in blended mode. And we have also started MBA executive program in sustainability. So it's basically working executive. So we have quite a good number of students, I think 6 to 7 students enrolled. Those they are the corporate executive already working, but somehow because they want to gain professional qualification in sustainability, particularly in management, so they have enrolled in this program. And we have got a very good response from the industry, and there's a lot of inquiries being generated in the recent past, particularly for our working executive program. So we see that in corporate community there are many takers of this program, and especially in heavy industry, the industries those they are emission intensive. So there I see a good demand of this program, apart from the consulting organization and NGO. So as Dr. Sanjana has rightly mentioned that we will invite you shortly to our business school, and maybe we can have apart from having your interaction with the student, we'll seek few ideas from you in this area and in the other area of management. So thank you. So Dr. Vani, are you flashing the name of the best paper award?
Yes, sir. I hope my screen is visible.
Yeah, your screen is visible.
Yeah.
So please,
Okay.
please make it a PowerPoint presentation.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Just a second.
Can you make it in a PowerPoint display mode? Yes, now it is fine.
Yeah. Okay.
So the best paper award goes to, we have selected 2 paper out of the various paper presented during last 2 days in various technical session. And the judges, they have evaluated this paper based on how these papers are written and how these papers are presented. So they have considered few criteria like the novelty of that paper, the kind of research orientation which is there, the kind of research questions and research gap the authors have analyzed and they have addressed the agenda, and the overall contribution which a particular paper is making in that area. So the first paper as visible on the screen is Can International Business Perspective Measure Sustainable Development of BRICS Country? A panel data analysis, and the authors are Indrajit Ghoshal, Piali Roy Chaudhary, and Monica Arora. So Monica Arora is professor at Amity Business School, Amity University, and the first author is from Purnima University, Jaipur, an Institute of Management Study. The another paper which is, wait, go back. You are very fast. Vani, just go back to slide.
Yes, sir. I'm moving it. Actually, some technical glitch is there, so it is not visible on my. So yes, sir. Actually, on full screen mode, it will not work, sir. So I'll just increase the size.
Go to the next slide. Go to the next slide. Yeah. So the second paper is Impact of Leadership and Control on Family Business Performance through Strategic Decision Making, First and Second Generation Ownership Analysis. The authors are Lovika Goyal, Professor Ravi Kiran, and Dr. Subhash Chandra Bose from Thapar Institute of Engineering and Technology, Patiala, Punjab. So my heartiest congratulations to the authors of these paper, and let's have a round of applause for the authors and their valuable contribution this conference and earning the best paper award of this conference. Over to you, Dr. Vani.
Thank you so much, sir, for presenting the Best Paper Award. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Ranjana Kothari, Associate Professor and Conference Co-Convener, Amity Business School, for the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Swati. A very good evening to one and all joined this valedictory session of 2 days international conference on sustainable management practices for inclusive growth, issues, challenges, and strategies, which has been organized by Amity Business School, Amity University, Haryana. I, Dr. Ranjana Kothari, on behalf of Amity Business School, family, and our beloved chairperson, Conference Dr. Vikas Madhukar, would like to first of all extend my most sincere thanks to God Almighty and to our visionary leaders, Professor Founder President Dr. Ashok Chauhan and our Honorable Chancellor Dr. Aseem Chauhan, who have always been to make our students global citizens, skilled, independent, and forward-looking to become the leaders of tomorrow. I thank our Honorable Vice Chancellor Professor P.B. Sharma, who is a constant inspiration to work towards sustainability. And my heartfelt thanks to Honorable Pro Vice Chancellor Professor Dr. Vikas Madhukar, Amity University, Haryana, who has been spearheading many innovative practices in the domain of sustainability. I congratulate to the Best Paper awardees and thank to all the participants to make this international conference a great success with your presence and expression of your thoughts through your research work. I would extend to a very hearty vote of thanks to our distinguished speakers for the day, who spared time from their busiest schedule to grace the occasion and share their experience. It would be a great takeaway for all the participants. I would like to thank our partners, CII, IGBC, USGBCI, UNO Minda, for all the support, and our own institutions at Amity Academic Staff College, Amity School of Architecture and Planning, Amity School of Earth and Environmental Sciences, and to Dr. Ila Gupta and Dr. Sanjana Vish for all your kind support. Now, I would like to extend many thanks to my colleagues at Business School for their enormous cooperation in the organization of this gala event. We have been fortunate enough that to be backed by a team of very motivated and dedicated colleagues of our school. Events like this cannot happen overnight. The wheels start rolling months ago. It requires planning and a bird's eye for details. We are blessed to have a great leader among us who was always a big motivation and an inspiration to all of us. Our chairperson conference, Professor Dr. Vikas Madhukar. Thank you so much, sir, for your guidance. Without that, it was not possible. My special thanks to the team behind this great show, the people who have been the backbone of the function, our conveners, Dr. Neeti Chatterjee and Dr. Rishiman Rai, and our co-convener, Professor Dr. Monica Arora. Thank you so much for your all the efforts, involvement, and willingness to take on the completion of the task beyond your comfort zone. A big thank to Master of Ceremony, Dr. Vani Agrawal and Ms. Swati Gupta. Thanks a lot to one and all, directly or indirectly, involved in this program. We would like to see you with new zeal, with new enthusiasm, and with new heights in your professional careers very soon in our upcoming events and conferences. Thank you all. And thank you to IT support and Mr. Mobin. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you everyone for joining us and making it a very successful event. Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. And once again, on behalf of the entire Amity Business School, my appreciation to all my team members, my appreciation to the head of the department of Amity School of Architecture and Planning, Dr. Ila Gupta, and of course, Dr. Sanjana Vish, who is heading our Amity Staff College. Dr. Sanjana, thank you so much for involving in this conference from the very beginning, and contributing by bringing very good resource person to the conference in our inaugural session and valedictory session. Thank you so much, and thank you to our head of the institution of ASIS, all faculty members, students, and once again thanks to Dr. Kumresh Mishra, and thanks to Mr. Randeep Saxena for sparing your valuable time and join the conference and sharing your insightful address to the students and participants. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. IT team, please close the session. Thank you.